Henry Tudor, he had a fantastic game, and that one is still kind of settling in. Is this one, the bishop pair against the knight pair. And whoever wins this one is going to take the lead.
Yeah, this is the battle of the two GMs, by the way. This is the one we've been waiting for. We saved it to round 5. Don't worry, you're going to see it again in round 10. That's how a double round robin works. Now, we're so early in the game. Let's go back to the beginning and see how they got here, because the action starts so quickly. We often don't have a chance. And we have ourselves, this is actually very similar to that Kasparov versus the world match back in 1999. I think, Yovi, you were 2 years old. So we'll talk about what happened in that match later. But anyway, not exactly the same opening. And white gives up the bishops to get a ton of space and to fracture all of black's pawns. And now black has to sort of huddle up here and hope to gain some space later on. And now we are in our live position after knight on c to e2. Is there any general rule, Yovi, you can give our audience when it's two knights versus two bishops? Is there anything at all in your training that you can enlighten our audience about?
Well, generally, they do say that you try to keep the position closed when you're fighting with two knights. And in this type of position, what you're going to be doing is you're going to try to find posts for your knights, and you've got to anchor them. And here, I mean, this is kind of concrete stuff. Here, it's all about king safety for black, and it's all about for white, that is just simply to keep those two bishops that are just such powerful pieces in open positions, keep them to their defensive roles. So for instance, this bishop on e7 must be defending f6, and you can see that's exactly what Yaz is doing. So the knight is coming to f4. If the bishop moves away from the e7 diagonal, then knight to h5 is going to come, and in fact knight to h5 makes an appearance as we speak. And the knight on d4 is going to be trying to take care of this bishop on d7. So this one's very, very concrete. In general, two knights don't really work very well against two bishops, so you got to kind of rely on the pawn structure to do some of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I do see a lot of targets, though, for white. So if you gave me the opportunity to pick a color, I'd probably pick white. By the way, these are not just the two grandmasters in the field. They're also the two players with the highest chess.com blitz ratings. In fact, Sina is slightly ahead of Yagiz, but, just sort of by a small, minute amount, 3165 to 3149. Interestingly, the two overall highest players in the field are both going to play in our afternoon event. Faustino and Andy are both above 3,200 in blitz, but these are the top two. I mean, we're not sneezing at 3,160. Okay, that's like my rating on my main account plus my rating on my alt account. And then I just barely get to 3,200. So, all right, anyway, back to our chess game here. A lot of weaknesses, but the king gets out of dodge by castling queenside. And for the second straight round, we have a double queenside castle position to focus on.
Yes, and I was going to say 3,100 is like, I'm not worthy standards. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. And it just sounds to me like we're going to see stars of the future here, like potential world champions. I mean, such a great score, and it's great talent as well. As someone who struggles with mouse speed, I'm just in awe of also how quickly they play. I just want to add that one. And here, as you mentioned, there are a lot of targets for white to start attacking, namely the pawn on f6. The king is also weak as well, but black is active, and now the rook is perhaps threatening to swing over to g5 to do maybe even go to c5 in order to mobilize. The king is probably pretty safe on b8 as well. Wow, why is this so bad? Queen to e2 given a double question mark.
Yeah, I don't know if the pawn could have been taken on g2. It's not like knight to g3 traps the rook, because the rook could then just take on h2. But this is a bit of a cat and mouse game, because white is not making it clear which of the weak pawns he's going to double team. And black is also not pushing any of the center pawns to free the bishops. So nobody's making any what you might think of as irreversible decisions, no committal decisions. But now it's the e pawn. This rook was first targeting the g pawn, then swung over to c5. And now all the pawns are on the fourth rank. This armada is coming, but the pawns are just starting to fall. Very strange decision to just give a center pawn like that. And now you could play d5 to solidify the rook if you wanted to. But the a4
pawn is hanging.
Yeah. In case the queen goes back.
Okay, now how to... hang on a second. The rook is trapped. It's in the middle of the board, but it ain't got any squares, Mike.
Yes, but what if you push a pawn and if the rook is taken, you take back with the pawn and the knight is hanging? So just for example, let's try the f pawn and let's just say the knight takes and the pawn takes. Now when the queen moves, the knight is hanging. So there's some sort of defense related to that idea. Let's go back to the live game and see exactly how Sina handles this particular situation.
Well, I think he's gone for your idea in some way or other.
Yeah, if you push the d pawn, notice when the rook is captured and the pawn captured, the bishop is going to be hanging at the end of a lot of variations. That's why the f pawn made a little bit more sense to me to be the pawn that guards the rook, but an incredibly double-edged position from our all grandmaster matchup here in round 5, pivotal for the standings.
Absolutely, and a very stressful position indeed for our players, as we see there, Sina on our screens. He's just trying to work out exactly what he should be playing, and I think we've seen a few more moves. Maybe we can just quickly catch up with what's happened. F5, the move that you suggested, not apparently being the best move, but a very natural one.
Computer doesn't like it. I didn't look at this pawn takes because I thought that the trade of pawns would not actually lead to anything. But rook to d5, avoiding that blunder of knight takes rook that I showed. The rook comes up, guards everything, swings over to an attack. Nobody cares about material. And now queen b6 is coming. The queen goes to a6 to defend. Rook check. Uh-oh, the king's running out of squares, so the queen has to take. Let's see. If the king had moved back, what would we have seen then, Yovi? Just maybe rook takes bishop or something?
Yeah, rook takes bishop. At least that's going to be a simple way to get the advantage.
All right, and here we have this position. It should be noted, let's get to the live position quickly because so many moves have been made here and I'm falling very far behind. But the last time a rook and two bishops faced off against Yagiz King did not survive. But this is not round 1. This is deep into the game and the players are playing super quickly. In fact, I'm just going to go to the live position because I frankly cannot keep up. And now, even if you sat queen for rook, the two pawns are so far apart. That could be winning, but I don't think you're in any hurry to get to any kind of position like that.
No, I think the best chance that black has is to actually sacrifice itself for the h-pawn. And if you keep the a-pawn, it's not going to be that easy to win this one because the white king isn't going to be able to easily get itself into... Hang on a second, I got my things confused. It's if you have a pawn and rook defending, not a white queen and white pawn.
Yeah, I know what you meant. If black has the a-pawn with the rook, certain fortresses are possible that there's no way we have time to break down. But the good news for white is that even after the pawn is lost, it's winning. But now we're okay. Queen c8 mate. I thought we were going to have to show some technique, but checkmate is one technique, and Yagiz beats his main rival, and Yagiz gets to 4. I think